The instant my boy admitted I was banned from his upcoming holiday gathering, I simply grinned, climbed inside my truck, and dialed one specific number. Before January arrived, their monthly housing subsidies were completely terminated, and that initial step was merely the opening phase of my broader strategy. Extreme entitlement needed to face appropriate consequences, and justice had to be served. You will be absolutely shocked by my subsequent actions. Before we dive into the details, remember to follow Viking Insight and drop your city in the comments section below. I offered to prepare my renowned roasted bird this season, I remarked, sinking further into my son's premium seating arrangement. The recipe featuring that herb dressing your late mother adored. Do you recall how she insisted it surpassed her own grandmother's version? Those sentences lingered within the heated room, blending with the fragrance radiating from my daughter-in-law's costly artisan wax pillars. My son adjusted his position next to me, his marital band reflecting illumination cast by their massive imported evergreen display. A subtle shift occurred within his body language, his shoulders collapsing slightly as if anticipating a collision. "Father, regrettably, your presence isn't desired here during the holidays." Those syllables struck my chest like a heavy physical object. I shut my eyelids momentarily, convinced my hearing had malfunctioned. "Could you clarify that statement? For what reason am I excluded?" My boy avoided maintaining eye contact, locking his vision onto the polished stone centerpiece table. That was the exact piece of furniture I had financially assisted them in acquiring earlier this year when his wife determined their previous decor lacked adequate refinement. "Her folks are visiting, and they would rather you remain absent." My extremities lost their warmth instantly. They would rather. "It simply makes things less complicated, Father. You're aware of how her relatives treat their festive customs. They maintain highly specific methods for celebrating." His vocal volume decreased alongside every syllable, appearing to wither away internally. I scanned the surrounding gathering space, noting the premium window treatments I funded after his spouse lamented about neighborhood visibility. Glancing toward the expensive timber flooring financed through my property's secondary loan. Staring at the decorative ceiling trim, which had pushed my primary credit account to its absolute limit. Every square inch within this residence showcased my personal financial sacrifice, my devotion toward my sole male heir. "Highly specific methods," I echoed deliberately. "Care to explain those methods, son?" He visibly winced. "Father, I ask that you avoid complicating this situation further." Glancing through the architectural opening toward their culinary area, I spotted her pristine professional baking appliance. That premium unit she claimed was absolutely vital during her culinary enthusiasm phase, which endured for roughly 21 days. $2,000 from my savings resting on that counter, likely utilized a maximum of 2 times since early autumn. "So, where exactly am I supposed to celebrate the season?" The inquiry escaped my lips much softer than I had initially planned. His expression crumbled with guilt. "Perhaps you might consider, I'm not sure, maybe traveling to see Aunt Rosa. Alternatively, we could plan an activity for the following weekend." The following weekend, as though this sacred seasonal celebration was merely a casual dental visit suitable for convenient postponement. I pushed myself upward, my joints aching after nearly a decade spent shouldering this immense financial weight entirely solo. "Understood, son." "Father, hold on." However, my momentum was already directed toward their entryway, walking past those framed, generational portraits where my own image became increasingly minimized over time. Moving beyond the garment storage area overflowing with his wife's endless outerwear collection. My fingers grasped the metallic exit handle, feeling its freezing solidity against my skin. "My boy," I stated firmly without turning my head backward, "pass along my festive regards to her parents." The freezing winter breeze struck my skin sharply as I marched toward my vehicle. From behind, I registered him shouting my name a single time, immediately followed by the quiet latching sound of their heavy wooden barrier shutting. A permanent, undeniable conclusion. I occupied the driver's position temporarily, the ignition remaining off, observing those festive bulbs sparkling across neighborhood glass panes belonging to structures where my presence would forever remain unwanted. My mobile device vibrated constantly, likely him attempting to mend the fracture using hollow guarantees and emotional manipulation. I refused to press the accept button. Alternatively, I twisted my ignition switch and steered outward into the night, abandoning that inviting illumination radiating from a property I purchased but could never truly inhabit. The climate control system buzzed softly, combating the freezing evening temperatures while I drove through those recognizable avenues, heading back to my own residence. The sprawling southern district surrounded my vehicle, every intersection triggering recollections of the individual I formerly represented. That naive gentleman, who genuinely assumed blood ties, superseded everything else, willing to empty his final bank account just to witness his boy express joy. That specific individual was an absolute idiot. I halted my truck beside a crimson traffic signal near the 29th intersection, observing a younger male packing brightly colored packages inside his family transport vehicle. His offspring pushed their noses against the rear glass, their excited exhalations creating condensation across the transparent surface. Many years ago, that exact scene mirrored our own reality. Long before she entered the picture, prior to my transformation into a mobile cash dispenser burdened by frustratingly human sentiments, those terrible financial figures began cascading across my mind, resembling a malfunctioning casino terminal. $2,800 extracted every single month across a 5-year span. My personal adding machine had essentially surrendered when I finally calculated the overarching sum last spring. Over $140,000. A larger fortune than my late wife and I managed to accumulate for our entire elderly years. Vanished. Completely evaporated. I shoved my boot against the gas pedal with excessive force the moment that traffic signal transitioned to emerald. My engine reacted with an aggressive roar, perfectly aligning with my internal rage. Fifth Avenue. That represented the exact location where I restructured the financing on my own dwelling. Our sanctuary, belonging to my deceased partner and me, leveraged solely to secure their initial property deposit. That banking representative had stared at me, possessing a sympathetic expression I completely failed to comprehend back then. "Sir, are you absolutely positive regarding this decision? You are jeopardizing a significant portion of your assets to fund another person's real estate acquisition." Another person's real estate acquisition? This wasn't framed as my boy's long-term stability or my lineage's sanctuary. Merely another person's investment. Lincoln Avenue showcased the financial institution where I secured an additional line of credit roughly 24 months prior when my boy experienced temporary unemployment. "It's strictly a brief situation, Father, merely until my career gets back on track." His spouse had remained stationed behind his shoulder, sporting a designer handbag worth $700, agreeing with feigned empathy while silently computing the exact monetary value of my paternal panic. 0. Ultimately, my paternal panic held absolutely zero value in their eyes. I steered my truck onto my personal parking pad, navigating over fractured cement sections I simply lacked the capital to repair because every available cent vanished into their flawless suburban illusion. My exterior entrance illumination sparked erratically, representing yet another maintenance task I continually postponed. Stepping indoors, my living space appeared painfully vacant without her joyful vocalizations, completely lacking the communal heat of family celebrations that were clearly never going to materialize again. My mobile device chimed loudly while I struggled sorting my door keys, the piercing audio bouncing against those unadorned vertical surfaces. Her specific contact identifier illuminated my screen, undoubtedly prepared to justify why my background proved insufficiently refined for her relative's fragile aristocratic preferences. Flawless scheduling. I had anticipated this exact dialogue for half a decade. I accepted the connection during the fourth audible chime, forcing her to hold the line just adequately long enough to question whether I intended to respond whatsoever. Father-in-law. Her vocalization oozed with synthetic sweetness, mirroring the identical pitch she utilized whenever requesting I handle their municipal utility statements or property levies. I was informed regarding that minor miscommunication alongside your son. Miscommunication? I leaned heavily against my culinary workspace, refusing to remove my heavy winter jacket. I sincerely doubt any miscommunication occurred. Your stance was articulated with crystal clarity. Listen, I recognize this appears overly strict, however you must comprehend my relative's viewpoint. They operate as deeply conventional individuals. They anticipate a highly specific ambiance during these festive gatherings. A highly specific ambiance, I echoed back. And how exactly would you define this ambiance? A brief hesitation followed. I detected retail packaging crinkling nearby. She was likely blowing capital that rightfully belonged toward their housing obligations. Capital that apparently fell under my jurisdiction to provide. Well, they simply aren't accustomed to your particular culinary style. All those heavily seasoned traditional dishes and high-volume melodies. And to be completely transparent, they represent highly educated members of society. They anticipate discussions revolving around global happenings, classic novels, high culture, you understand. Those sentences struck my core infinitely harder than a literal punch. Nearly a decade spent, chewing my own tongue, absorbing daily indignities to protect my boy's marriage, ignoring the obvious reality that she perceived me as nothing more than contracted domestic labor. My particular culinary style. My vocal pitch remained perfectly stable, entirely restrained. Are you referring to the identical meals you consumed every single weekend for 36 months when your household budget was constrained? Those wrapped corn dishes you claimed sparked memories of your own ancestral matriarch? That was a separate circumstance entirely. We felt gratitude back then, but currently with your folks arriving, you cannot risk the ethnic laborer humiliating you across your luxurious dining arrangement. That synthetic sweetness vanished instantly. Cease this theatrical behavior right now. This issue has zero connection to ethnic backgrounds. It completely revolves around societal status. My father secured highest academic honors from his university. My mother converses fluently across 4 distinct dialects. They spend their summers at exclusive coastal retreats. What precise value could you possibly add to their evening dialogue? Anecdotes regarding installing ceramic flooring. Searing anger expanded within my ribcage, yet I maintained my auditory restraint. I constructed an enterprise starting from absolute zero following your spouse's grandfather passing away. I've provided livelihoods for over 100 workers. I've submitted larger tax payments than your father acquired during his most lucrative professional annum. Wealth does not dictate everything. Lineage is vital. Academic pedigree is vital. And speaking with absolute candor, your late spouse comprehended her societal position significantly better than you comprehend yours. The connection turned terrifyingly quiet. She had traversed the boundary. A boundary I remained completely unaware existed until her expensive footwear trampled aggressively across it. Repeat your statement regarding my deceased partner. I am merely pointing out she possessed the awareness to assimilate properly. She avoided creating disturbances. She recognized that certain environments were simply not designed for her presence. My palm gripped the communication device so intensely my joints lost all coloration. My late wife contained more dignity within her smallest digit than your entire ancestral tree will ever manage to cultivate. Give me a break. She functioned as a domestic maid who secured a fortunate marriage. At least she maintained the appropriate intelligence to remain tight-lipped regarding her origins. Listen to me. My vocalization deepened into a frequency I barely recognized as my own. I require your undivided attention immediately. Our dialogue is permanently concluded. We are finished acting like relatives. You cannot simply— We are finished, I reiterated forcefully, terminating the digital link. I placed my device softly onto the stone surface, my fingers remaining remarkably unshaken. The surrounding cooking area suddenly appeared fundamentally altered, physically contracted yet infinitely purified, as though a suffocating pressure had evaporated from the oxygen itself. I marched toward my administrative station tucked in the corner, extracting that beige document organizer I had intentionally ignored for countless weeks. Financial institution ledgers, property loan agreements, 60 months of scheduled electronic deductions that steadily drained my resources while they existed resembling nobility. The moment had arrived to halt the hemorrhaging. Those paper records blanketed my eating surface resembling clues scattered across a detective's workspace. 60 individual banking reports, every single document displaying that identical scheduled withdrawal. $2,800, executing precisely on the 15th calendar day, transferring seamlessly from my financial reserves into theirs, representing a documented history of my monumental foolishness. I retrieved my digital calculator and commenced the arithmetic. 12 months multiplied equaled 33,600. The subsequent 12 months added an identical sum. Reaching the 36th month, I entirely ceased acquiring fresh apparel for myself. Entering the 48th month, I shifted my provisioning to bargain bin supermarkets. This current cycle, the 60th month, I survived by consuming mashed legume paste between bread slices during midday simply to maintain solvency. $143,400. This excluded their initial property deposit. This excluded occasions I handled their municipal services when her retail compulsion exceeded rational boundaries. This excluded the upgraded weatherproofing, the exterior botanical installations, the interior furnishings she deemed absolutely mandatory to sustain their projected image. I leaned backward against my wooden seating fixture, staring at those digits until my vision lost focus. Her post-mortem insurance payout, my elderly survival funds, the university accounts we initiated for descendants I was clearly forbidden to interact with. Every single cent vanished, channeled directly into a residence where my presence was deemed unacceptable for a holiday feast. I grabbed my mobile unit, swiping through my directory until locating the customer support line for my financial institution. Their robotic greeter provided language selections. How incredibly considerate. How exceptionally accommodating toward individuals sharing my heritage. Client Assistance Desk. My name is Jennifer. How might I serve you this evening? I require the immediate termination of a scheduled electronic transfer, I instructed my vocal cords projecting more stability than they had exhibited in half a decade. Absolutely, sir. I will require your account identifier alongside specific security verification details. I recited the numerical sequence, listening to her keyboard clacking across the connection. She remained thoroughly professional, highly competent, entirely devoid of prejudice regarding why a 62-year-old gentleman was suddenly severing scheduled deposits clearly directed toward his child's property loan. I have located the specific transaction you mentioned, sir. $2,800 deducted monthly, directed toward the corporate lender. Routing identifier ending in 7423. What is the historical duration of this recurring transaction? 60 months. Those syllables tasted like poison. And your intention is to sever this connection with immediate effect? I scanned my personal culinary space, observing the obsolete cooking equipment I lacked the funds to upgrade, noticing the vertical surfaces requiring fresh pigment, staring at the glass panes leaking freezing outdoor wind simply because I redirected my maintenance capital toward funding another family's royal fortress. With immediate effect, I verified. Completed. The automated deduction is permanently disabled. Are there additional requests I might assist you with this evening? Negative, I replied, genuinely shocked by how phenomenal that specific syllable felt rolling off my tongue. Negative. That concludes my business. I ended the call and remained motionless within the abrupt tranquility of my residence. Beyond my walls, the freezing regional darkness blanketed the municipality. Festive illumination sparkled across neighboring window panes where households converged, lacking stipulations, lacking prejudice, lacking any requirement to conceal their genuine identities. For the initial occasion in half a decade, my upcoming monthly fiscal sheet would actually balance perfectly. For the initial occasion since losing my spouse, I possessed the capital to repair my exterior entryway illumination, procure high-quality provisions, perhaps finally embark on a leisure trip. I collected those banking ledgers, the loan contracts, every physical artifact documenting my unappreciated benevolence. Subsequently, I marched toward my brick hearth, ignited a wooden stick, and observed half a decade of self-sacrifice transform entirely into gray dust. Those flames radiated comfortably against my skin, generating more comfort than I'd experienced in countless seasons. My pocket device vibrated with a digital text, likely my boy desiring to issue apologies, or his wife requiring capital for something absolutely critical. Perhaps fresh, decorative cushions. I refused to read the message. Alternatively, I decanted a measure of premium fermented grain spirit, a specific container I hoarded anticipating a monumental event that previously never materialized. This current evening felt sufficiently monumental. I elevated my crystal tumbler toward the vacant living space, acknowledging my late spouse's portrait resting above the hearth, honoring the naive gentleman I formerly was, alongside the formidable individual I was rapidly transitioning into. "Joyous holidays to myself," I whispered, genuinely meaning every syllable. The following dawn emerged freezing yet brilliant, winter rays penetrating my culinary glass as I savored my secondary mug of roasted bean water. For the initial occasion in countless seasons, I wasn't mentally computing the exact sum of capital scheduled to evaporate from my reserves within 72 hours. This newfound liberty carried a sweeter flavor than the premium South American roast I finally permitted myself to purchase. My device chimed precisely at 10:47 in the morning. Her contact identifier pulsed across the glass, resembling a hazardous materials symbol. Father-in-law. Her vocalization projected that recognizable frequency of thinly veiled annoyance. "I require your services to transport my folks from the regional aviation terminal. Their transport from the coastal city touches down exactly at 1400 hours." I placed my ceramic mug downward with extreme caution, observing the vapor drift toward the drywall. Did our verbal exchange from yesterday slip your memory entirely? Listen, regardless of whatever conflict occurred yesterday, we must prioritize logistical necessities immediately. My folks require transit, and you represent the sole individual possessing available hours this afternoon. Her sheer arrogance was genuinely staggering. Barely 24 hours after declaring my absolute unworthiness to consume a festive meal alongside her lineage, she anticipated I would function as their dedicated chauffeur. And you are requesting my services precisely because that represents standard family behavior. Relatives assist relatives. Her pitch elevated with sheer frustration. Furthermore, Let us speak with total candor here. You do not qualify as my opponent. You lack the fortitude to serve as my opponent. Therefore, simply start your vehicle and retrieve them." There it rested, the ultimate degradation disguised as an absolute directive. "Which carrier?" I inquired softly. "Flight 447. They will await pickup near luggage rotating unit number 3. And father-in-law, they anticipate an individual capable of managing their baggage with appropriate care. Do not bring shame upon us." I detected her manicured fingertips striking a dense surface. Undoubtedly her premium stone counter, the exact surface I financed when she determined synthetic materials were completely inadequate for hosting her social gatherings. "Absolutely," I confirmed. I will manage the entire situation." "Excellent. Furthermore, clothe yourself in acceptable attire. Perhaps that navy button-down you modeled during your son's academic ceremony. They pay attention to details of that nature." The audio connection severed instantly. She completely neglected to express basic gratitude. I reclined into my seating fixture, observing the blackened glass of my device. 1400 hours, Flight 447, luggage sector, rotating unit 3. I checked the circular timepiece mounted above my basin. 10:52 in the morning. Abundant time remained. I poured an additional measure of hot bean water, dropping an extra cube of sweetener into the dark liquid. Before unfolding yesterday's print publication to tackle the word puzzle, I left incomplete. Vertical column 7. Postponed satisfaction. 12 alphabetical characters. The solution would naturally materialize eventually. Approaching 2:15 in the afternoon, I was burrowing deeply into my preferred reading chair, gripping a newly brewed mug of citrus-infused leaf water alongside the Sunday edition of our regional publication. The puzzle from the previous day rested solved across my wooden surface. Postponed satisfaction translated perfectly to prolongation. My device buzzed aggressively against the timber grain. Her contact identifier appeared yet again. I permitted the ringing to continue. The freezing seasonal rays angled through my front windows, heating the exact area where I previously squandered countless isolated nights, tallying the painful expense of my boundless charity. This afternoon, the absolute quiet carried a distinct texture. It felt earned. It felt deliberate. 14:47 hours. The device vibrated once more. This instance, I read the digital snippet scrolling across my lock screen. "Where exactly are you located? My folks are currently—" I flipped the electronic rectangle downward against the table and resumed reading the athletics section. Our regional football franchise suffered another defeat. Certain realities remained permanently fixed. Approaching 3:30, my device had vibrated half a dozen times. I had completed the entire print publication, prepared a secondary kettle of leaf water, and commenced cataloging the chaotic storage drawer located beneath my eating surface. It was genuinely astonishing how much productivity one could achieve when not scrambling frantically to accommodate individuals who viewed you as their private luggage handler. The seventh auditory alert sounded at 15:45. Rather than her specific identifier, I noticed an unidentified numerical sequence. Undoubtedly her folks utilizing a borrowed communication device near the luggage carousel. I permitted that specific alert to echo into nothingness as well. Outdoors, an adjacent resident was stringing festive illumination across his front deck. His offspring sprinted across the frozen grass, displaying that chaotic enthusiasm exclusive to winter afternoons. Standard households engaging in standard activities. Nobody remained abandoned anywhere, anticipating the arrival of an individual who was absolutely never going to appear. 16:15 hours. My communication device initiated ringing and flatly refused to cease. Her number, followed by the unidentified sequence, followed by her number once again. The vibration transformed into a continuous drone, resembling an enraged insect trapped behind a window pane. I strolled into my culinary space and severed my physical phone cable directly from the drywall jack. Subsequently, I powered my cellular device completely down. Flawless tranquility. I crafted a toasted dairy sandwich and warmed a metallic cylinder of crushed tomato puree, comforting sustenance I hadn't permitted myself to consume in countless weeks, because every available nutritional budget had been diverted towards subsidizing their luxurious existence while covering my own basic survival. The dairy product liquefied into a flawless golden hue. The puree radiated steam from my preferred ceramic container. Outdoors, the wintertide solar orb was already commencing its descent, projecting elongated silhouettes across my rear property line. Somewhere across the municipality, 3 individuals were likely hovering inside a multi-level concrete parking structure, debating regarding municipal transit fees, deeply confused regarding how their dedicated servant mustered the sheer nerve to leave them completely stranded. That specific mental image amplified the flavor profile of my tomato puree significantly. By 1700 hours, I had consumed my evening meal, filled my mechanical dish cleanser, and was contemplating which motion picture to project. Countless years had evaporated since I possessed an entire undisturbed evening solely for myself, completely devoid of stressing over financial emergencies or spontaneous labor requests. I was extending my arm toward the television controller when somebody commenced striking my primary entrance door. This wasn't standard knocking, it was aggressive battering, the specific variety of violent hammering that shook the architectural framing and broadcasted absolute, unadulterated wrath. I placed my ceramic mug downward and strolled unhurriedly toward the disturbance, already fully aware exactly which individuals I would discover waiting on the exterior concrete. The battering amplified as I neared the threshold, every successive strike demonstrating escalating violence. Peering through the optical security lens, I observed 3 human shapes clustered upon my compact exterior deck, resembling predatory canines surrounding vulnerable game. I unlatched the barrier to discover his crimson-flushed facial features hovering mere inches from my own. "What on earth is your severe malfunction?" he bellowed, shoving his way past my shoulder into my primary living space, completely devoid of an invitation. We lingered at that miserable aviation facility for exceeding 3 continuous hours. His wife trailed closely behind him, her typically immaculate grooming completely chaotic, her mouth compressed into a rigid line expressing absolute, undiluted malice. "This represents entirely intolerable conduct from an individual of your senior demographic," she declared. "Utterly primitive." My daughter-in-law entered last, her expensive winter garment heavily creased, her facial cosmetics smeared untidily. "You subjected us to extreme public humiliation. Are you even remotely aware of the damage you inflicted? My folks were compelled to hire a $40 municipal transit vehicle simply because you opted to vacate your obligations." My vocal cords sliced directly through their synchronized chorus of outrage, resembling a razor severing delicate fabric. They abruptly ceased their tirade midway, genuinely paralyzed by the icy, metallic undertone in my delivery. "Pardon me." His complexion transitioned from crimson directly into deep violet. "You possess absolutely zero authority to issue commands within this environment, friend, not following the stunt you orchestrated this afternoon." "This building constitutes my personal property," I stated with low volume, remaining entirely stationary beside the open threshold. "And I require your immediate departure." She stepped closer, her vocal tone practically oozing with the precise brand of aristocratic superiority she had spent decades refining to weaponize against individuals resembling me. "You are blatantly failing to grasp the sheer gravity of your massive error. My spouse maintains highly influential networks across this entire municipality. Corporate networks, high society networks. You cannot disrespect individuals occupying our societal echelon and anticipate..." Consider this an educational experience for your entire group, I intercepted, holding her stare without flinching. An educational experience regarding your phenomenal hubris and your abysmal mishandling of individuals you classify as socially inferior. Her jaw dropped completely open. An educational experience? Who exactly do you believe you are to educate anybody regarding anything? You are a complete nobody. You are simply... I am the individual who finally ceased functioning as your dedicated ATM machine and personal chauffeur service. I pivoted slightly sideways, pushing the wooden barrier further outward. This educational seminar is officially concluded. You are permitted to exit. He thrust his index digit aggressively toward my sternum, yet lacked the actual courage to make physical contact. You lack the slightest comprehension regarding the caliber of opponent you are currently aggravating, elderly man. I have resided within this municipal boundary longer than your lungs have processed its oxygen. I am acquainted with highly significant personnel, individuals capable of transforming your existence into an agonizing ordeal. Am I receiving a formal threat? Consider it an ironclad guarantee. His pitch plummeted into a sinister hiss. You truly believe dumping senior citizens at an aviation hub represents an action you can execute without severe blowback? You are inches away from discovering the catastrophic magnitude of your miscalculation. His wife bobbed her head in agreement, her facial expression displaying a grin sharp enough to slice through solid diamond. Precisely. Choices trigger blowback, and your blowback will manifest in a highly public arena. My daughter-in-law clutched his forearm tightly. Father, let us depart immediately. This miserable elderly creature warrants zero further investment of our energy. They marched outward from my residence resembling a routed military platoon, yet he twisted backward at the very edge of my property line. You will deeply lament this decision, he spat. I personally guarantee it. I slammed the heavy barrier shutting behind their retreating forms, engaging the heavy security mechanism with a deeply gratifying metallic snap. Peering through my front glass, I monitored them cramming themselves inside their leased vehicle, continuing to bicker aggressively amongst their trio while navigating away into the freezing regional darkness. My sanctuary felt distinctly purified following their departure, as though their physical bodies had deposited a toxic residue that was currently evaporating. Yet their final parting declarations reverberated within the abrupt tranquility. Public blowback, significant personnel, influential networks. I strolled back toward my viewing area and retrieved my leaf water, discovering it remained pleasantly heated inside its container. For the initial instance throughout this entire chaotic ordeal, I experienced an emotion mildly resembling apprehension. However, it was swiftly crushed by a vastly superior sensation, intense anticipation. 72 hours later, I was savoring my early morning roasted bean water while browsing the regional publication when I spotted my personal portrait glaring back at me from the third page. The bold headline declared, "Local enterprise founder strands senior tourists at aviation hub amidst holiday weather crisis." My fingers froze entirely around my ceramic container. There my visage sat, rendered in monochrome ink, an outdated promotional photograph pulled from my commercial web portal, likely half a decade old. Positioned beneath it rested a narrative that simultaneously froze my circulatory system and ignited my furious temper. The article detailed how visiting relatives were abandoned inside the regional aviation facility for exceeding 4 hours last Sunday when a local family connection completely failed to execute a scheduled retrieval. The text emphasized their senior status, claiming they shivered in freezing conditions while a severe winter meteorological warning blanketed the geographic zone. Winter meteorological warning. The outdoor temperature had registered 52 degrees alongside brilliant sunshine. The publication quoted him directly, expressing sheer disbelief that any individual could exhibit such cruelty. claiming they dialed my number endlessly, but I maliciously ignored the connection. They described being forced into overpriced transit during allegedly hazardous atmospheric conditions, framing the entire episode as a direct threat to their elderly survival. The journalism continued by inserting speculative commentary regarding my supposedly unstable psychological state and unpredictable behavioral patterns. He had successfully depicted himself and his spouse as entirely helpless casualties targeted by a vicious, mentally deteriorating senior citizen who snapped without the slightest instigation. Zero mention regarding my exclusion from their festive feast. Zero context regarding his daughter's ridiculous demands or their half-decade of relentless financial vampirism. I was simply painted as the monstrous antagonist who endangered innocent vacationers during a fictional blizzard entirely fabricated within his own imagination. I placed my mug downward, reviewing the printed text meticulously. Then I consumed the narrative a third time. The author's credit belonged to a lifestyle correspondent. I possessed no familiarity with her identity, however, I instantly recognized the tactical deployment. He had cashed in his societal chips, leveraging his corporate banking history to insert this destructive fiction precisely where it would inflict maximum devastation against my commercial and personal standing. Highly intelligent, exceptionally intelligent. For the initial moment since this conflict erupted, I registered a reluctant admiration for my adversaries. They weren't merely spoiled aristocratic adult children throwing a tantrum. They operated with ruthless calculation. They recognized that within a moderately sized municipality, public standing represented absolute currency. A single strategically positioned journalistic hit piece possessed the power to obliterate 4 decades of diligent labor. They had officially initiated unlimited warfare. I folded the printed material with extreme precision, pushing it aside. My neural pathways were already transitioning into the highly systematic organizational frequency that originally allowed me to construct my commercial enterprise from absolute zero. This conflict was no longer centered around a missed airport transit. This wasn't connected to a holiday dinner rejection or canceled property loans. This conflict was entirely centered around emerging victorious. I extracted my portable computing machine, initiating digital inquiries through various search databases. I hunted down their specific identities, their digital social profiles, their corporate connections, their behavioral patterns, their vulnerabilities. I documented every single detail they foolishly broadcasted to the public sphere over the past several years. If their intention was engaging in a complex tactical game, I prepared to demonstrate what a genuine master strategist truly resembled. I checked my physical wall planner. December 18th, exactly 1 week prior to the major holiday. 1 week to engineer a retaliation they would permanently remember. I dedicated the subsequent 72 hours inhabiting an entirely separate reality. Not the reality where I functioned as the defeated, exhausted elder who permitted his bloodline to trample his dignity. This represented the reality where I operated as a ruthless commercial founder, a tactical architect, a man who forged an empire from nothingness and absolutely refused to let a pack of entitled leeches demolish my life's work. My portable computer transformed into a tactical command center. Digital social portals occupied my browser windows, resembling poker cards during a maximum stakes tournament. His profile showcased his retired banking executive status, his exclusive country club memberships, his treasury position within the Regional Commercial Leadership Coalition. A gentleman who dedicated his entire adult existence securing positions of immense trust and societal leverage. A gentleman possessing massive vulnerabilities. Her digital image gallery broadcasted a flawless illusion of aristocratic existence. Philanthropic luncheons, exclusive vineyard tours, coastal resort imagery proudly tagged emphasizing her exceptionally blessed reality. Every single upload was meticulously orchestrated to broadcast infinite success and elite refinement. Her comment sections overflowed with praise regarding her impeccable aesthetic and aspirational reality. Every single ounce of it financed utilizing alternative people's capital, specifically my capital. My daughter-in-law's primary social timeline provided the most damning evidence. Digital updates showcasing our gorgeous residence, featuring high-resolution images of the culinary space I completely financed. Geographic check-ins at premium dining establishments, perfectly aligning with the exact months I was forced to cover their basic utility invoices. A status update published barely 7 days prior, gloating about hosting the upcoming holiday feast, expressing extreme excitement to demonstrate their phenomenal hosting capabilities to their elite circle, their hosting capabilities, their residents, their phenomenal success. The sheer egotism was breathtaking. However, my son's professional networking profile delivered the ultimate necessary component. His recent digital interactions displayed a newly established connection with the exact lifestyle correspondent who authored the vicious hit piece against me. I reclined into my administrative chair, analyzing the massive web of evidence illuminating my display screen. These individuals had committed 3 catastrophic blunders. Primarily, they completely misjudged my capabilities. Secondarily, they launched their assault within the public sphere, which automatically granted me permission to execute my retaliation equally publicly. Thirdly, they extensively chronicled their entirely subsidized, privileged lifestyle across the digital universe, generating a flawless, undeniable catalog of absolute hypocrisy. I investigated the journalist's background. 43 years of age, regional university graduate, 15 years navigating local publications, entirely lacking any historical connection to the financial or corporate banking sector. This confirmed he had approached her completely cold, highly likely utilizing an introduction provided by his elite business network. A rapid 5-minute investigation through municipal corporate registries validated my hypothesis entirely. 3 shared connections existed, linking him directly to the journalist's managing editor. That devastating narrative hadn't materialized organically. It was meticulously and maliciously planted. Absolute amateur hour. I generated a fresh digital document, my fingers flying across the keys. I wasn't drafting a standard editorial response defending my character. I was constructing something infinitely more devastating. A comprehensive chronological ledger. Half a decade of sustained financial subsidization, rigorously supported by official banking ledgers, retail invoices, and voided physical checks. The initial property acquisition deposit totaling $47,000 extracted directly from my personal home equity line. The culinary space modernization occurring when she decided premium stone surfaces were absolutely critical, demanding $18,000 drained from my high-interest credit account. 60 consecutive monthly property loan transfers containing $2,800 apiece, currently totaling $168,000 and continually expanding. $250,000, considerably more wealth than I had invested into my own existence throughout the previous 10 years. My pocket device vibrated, displaying a text message from an unfamiliar sequence, most likely her attempting a fresh manipulation angle. I completely ignored the distraction, maintaining my intense focus. Approaching nightfall, I possessed every single document perfectly collated inside a heavy beige organizer capable of choking a large animal. Official banking ledgers, retail transaction slips, digital photographs extracted from their public profiles, proudly displaying luxury acquisitions I personally funded. Atop this mountain of evidence sat a freshly printed copy of their malicious newspaper article, heavily decorated with my aggressive red ink annotations explicitly identifying every single fabricated detail and deliberate distortion. I reviewed my wall planner once again. The 24th day was highlighted with crimson ink. not simply because it represented the eve of the holiday, but because it provided the ultimate chronological window for absolute justice. Based upon her digital social invitations, they were scheduled to host 12 individuals for their grand festive feast. Relatives, acquaintances, adjacent property owners, influential members occupying their elite social sphere. The exact demographic of individuals who consumed the regional publication and forged their personal judgments based upon its contents. The exact demographic of individuals who absolutely deserved to consume the unfiltered reality. I powered down my computing machine and strolled into my culinary space, retrieving my high-quality photographic equipment. The specific hardware I originally purchased to record commercial construction sites. The moment had arrived to deploy it for documenting an entirely different variety of demolition. Tomorrow marked the eve of the holiday. Tomorrow, these entitled parasites were scheduled to discover precisely what occurs when you declare unlimited warfare against a veteran who genuinely understands how to obliterate an enemy. The morning preceding the holiday manifested with a bleak, freezing atmosphere, the specific variety of regional winter weather that typically forces individuals to appreciate heated residences and warm familial bonding. Regrettably, I remained entirely banned from experiencing either. However, my schedule contained alternative activities. I arranged my documentary evidence resembling a prosecuting attorney finalizing materials for a major tribunal. Financial ledgers sorted chronologically by annum. Every single monthly electronic withdrawal illuminated using bright yellow fluorescent marker. Retail invoices organized sequentially, proving the undeniable trajectory of my financial life support maintaining their artificial reality. Printed imagery harvested from their digital portals. Her freshly acquired premium accessories. Their luxurious coastal vacation documentation. The obscenely expensive festive decorations currently draped across the property I had essentially secured for them. I maintained 12 exact duplicates of every single item. A dedicated packet intended for each individual dinner attendee. The malicious journalism piece rested atop each individual stack, my crimson annotations clearly visible along the borders. The word fabrication scrawled forcefully beside his direct quote regarding hazardous atmospheric conditions. Entirely false, written adjacent to the accusations regarding my psychological instability. Deliberately omitted context highlighted aggressively where the article conveniently forgot to mention half a decade of massive financial subsidization. I clothed myself with extreme precision, selecting my premium dark azure formal wear. The exact garments I utilized during my late spouse's memorial service, freshly ironed and prepared to facilitate an entirely different variety of permanent farewell. Today, I was permanently burying the naive elder who functioned as a welcome mat for his ungrateful bloodline. Tonight, I was resurrecting an individual who commanded absolute authority. At 18:30 hours, I packed my leather attaché case with the evidentiary packets and navigated my vehicle toward their upscale neighborhood. Their residence radiated inviting illumination, multiple automobiles occupying the concrete pad and crowding the adjacent asphalt. Glancing through their expansive front glass, I observed silhouettes shifting dynamically across their formal eating space. She was actively performing her hosting duties within the exact structure my capital had fundamentally secured. I positioned my truck directly opposite their property line and verified my timepiece. 18:45. Flawless synchronization. Sufficiently delayed, ensuring every guest was firmly planted at the dining surface. Sufficiently early, ensuring they were currently consuming the primary dish. Zero possibility of an effortless retreat for anybody involved. Their primary entrance remained completely unlatched. Naturally, it was. She absolutely adored broadcasting how incredibly secure their premium district remained, boasting they lacked any requirement to monitor security hardware, unlike individuals residing in less desirable sectors. I pushed the barrier open silently, the heated indoor oxygen striking my facial features simultaneously, alongside the echoing sounds of joyous chuckling and lively dialogue radiating from the eating area. "However, darling, our lineage simply does not operate in that manner," a voice echoed, immediately chased by additional sophisticated laughter. "Our lineage, following every single action they executed to permanently banish me from that exact group." I marched directly into the formal dining space, gripping my leather case, a dozen human faces pivoting toward my location, displaying expressions rapidly transitioning from mild confusion to absolute terror. She instantly paralyzed, her crystal beverage container hovering frozen midway toward her mouth. My boy's complexion drained of all pigmentation instantly. Her parents appeared as though a literal apparition had manifested before them. "Pleasant evening to everybody present," I announced with a perfectly casual tone, dropping my heavy leather case onto their premium stone serving credenza. "I sincerely trust my sudden inclusion in your festive celebration does not cause any severe distress." She recovered her vocal capabilities initially. "This represents completely unacceptable conduct. I demand your immediate departure from these premises." "On the contrary," I countered smoothly, unlatching my case and extracting the initial bundle of documentation. "I strongly believe your invited guests are fully entitled to comprehend exactly who financed this magnificent feast, this beautiful structure, and this entire luxurious existence you've been so proudly parading." An unfamiliar female, likely a member of her mother's philanthropic circle, shifted forward, displaying intense intrigue. "What exactly is this gentleman referencing?" "He is currently suffering through some variety of psychological breakdown," she interjected rapidly. "Husband, contact the authorities immediately." However, my physical momentum was already carrying me, circling the massive wooden table, depositing a dense bundle of evidence directly before every single seated attendee. "These represent the official financial ledgers," I stated, using a conversational volume. "Half a decade of uninterrupted monetary life support, $168,000 explicitly dedicated toward property loan installments, entirely excluding the initial deposit, the architectural upgrades, the premium furnishings, the advanced appliances, essentially every single item you are currently observing around this room." The entire chamber plunged into absolute silence, disrupted solely by the harsh friction of heavy paper as 12 distinct individuals commenced scrutinizing the provided evidence. I monitored, their facial expressions morphing violently as they processed the mathematics, the chronological stamps, the irrefutable documentation of my monumental charity contrasting directly against their host's massive deception. "This is absolutely," an unfamiliar male began articulating, then halted abruptly, his eyes locked onto a highlighted banking withdrawal. "Unforgivable," concluded the female positioned directly opposite him. "Why did you conceal this reality from our knowledge?" Her flawlessly constructed aristocratic composure was visibly shattering into pieces. "The situation contains significantly more nuance than these papers suggest. He willingly volunteered this assistance. We never actively demanded it." As a matter of fact, I sliced through her defense, extracting the printed journalism piece. "Let us pivot our discussion toward the exact things you actively demanded, alongside the horrific fictions you fed the regional media regarding my character." The ambient temperature inside the dining room seemingly plummeted 10 degrees instantly. I distributed duplicates of the newspaper hit piece across the eating surface, observing closely as the attendees immediately recognized my portrait connected to the highly unflattering narrative published barely 72 hours prior. "Presently," I declared, my vocal projection slicing cleanly through the thick, suffocating silence, Let us accurately identify the genuine psychological manipulators operating within this family. His complexion had transitioned from crimson directly into a sickly gray pallor. His wife remained entirely rigid within her seating fixture, her crystal glass completely ignored within her trembling grip. This specific gentleman utilized his corporate banking influence to maliciously manufacture this exact narrative, I continued, striking the printed paper with my index digit. Please observe how I am meticulously framed as an unstable, highly dangerous threat, maliciously abandoning vulnerable senior citizens amidst freezing atmospheric conditions. A silver-haired gentleman sporting a premium cashmere garment snapped his gaze upward from the text. What is the actual truth behind this scenario? The weather conditions were absolutely beautiful. The temperature registered 52 degrees alongside brilliant sunshine, I answered prior to the father formulating a response. Furthermore, they were never abandoned vacationers. They represent her parents, arriving specifically for this exact holiday feast. A feast I was explicitly forbidden from attending because my demographic profile was deemed insufficiently refined for their elite companionship. Her mother finally located her vocal cords. That is entirely... You never explicitly stated what, exactly? I retrieved my digital device, displaying multiple captured images of her daughter's arrogant social broadcasts. That my societal standing was too pathetic for your refined sensibilities? That my ethnic cuisine and working-class dialogue would severely humiliate you before your highly educated social circle? The female I previously linked to the philanthropic group squirmed violently within her chair. Surely you did not actually express those sentiments. This is horrifying. He is aggressively distorting the reality of the situation, the father blustered weakly, his delivery entirely devoid of actual confidence. This individual suffers from severe cognitive decline. The heavy pressure of advanced age, massive financial struggles. Massive financial struggles? I barked a harsh laugh. Sir, I have been actively subsidizing your offspring's luxurious existence, utilizing nearly $3,000 every single month for half a decade. The sole financial disasters occurring within this room are the ones your family is currently scheduled to experience. I rotated my body to address the entirety of the gathering. These specific individuals extracted nearly $250,000 from my reserves, while actively labeling me with derogatory slurs whenever I wasn't present. They systematically poisoned my relationship with my own son, banished me from all familial celebrations, and the exact moment I finally defended my own dignity and severed their funding, they attempted to completely obliterate my commercial reputation utilizing the regional press. My boy finally contributed to the dialogue, his vocalization barely exceeding a raspy whisper. Father, I possessed absolutely zero knowledge regarding that journalism piece. Your spouse possessed full knowledge, I responded with icy calm, and her parents meticulously engineered the entire operation. They successfully transformed me into a public monster simply because I refused to continue functioning as their private banking institution and unpaid transit service. The underlying social architecture within the dining space was collapsing violently, resembling shifting tectonic plates. I witnessed the realization blooming across every guest's face, the horrifying dawn of comprehension that every single detail they believed regarding their supposedly generous hosts was constructed entirely upon a foundation of parasitic theft and malicious lies. This behavior is completely unconscionable, declared a senior female wearing expensive pearls, her eyes glued to the banking transfers. How could you possibly permit your child to exploit this gentleman's boundless charity to such an extreme degree and subsequently launch a public assassination campaign the instant he stopped enabling your greed? His meticulously cultivated aristocratic facade was actively disintegrating. You simply lack the required context to understand the complete dynamic. I understand the dynamic flawlessly, the senior female intercepted aggressively. This gentleman single-handedly financed your entire lineage's survival, while you simultaneously treated him resembling disposable garbage. The moment he established a boundary, you attempted to destroy his life. Her mother's voice emerged, sounding completely choked. He literally stranded us at the aviation facility. Directly following your explicit declaration that my presence was entirely unacceptable for a holiday meal because my very existence was deemed inappropriate for your refined, aristocratic tastes, I countered with absolute tranquility. Directly following 60 months of paying your bills while you continuously scrutinized my ethnic heritage and lack of formal academic pedigree, the resulting silence was absolutely deafening. 12 distinct individuals glaring directly at the parents, their facial expressions projecting a mixture of absolute revulsion and profound humiliation forever associating with such venomous parasites. She attempted one final, incredibly desperate maneuver to reclaim the narrative. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you. This represents a private internal dispute that unfortunately escalated beyond acceptable parameters. Negative, I stated with crushing authority. This permanently ceased functioning as a private internal dispute the exact second you dragged the conflict into the public sphere. The moment you weaponized the regional press to assassinate my personal character. The moment you collectively determined my life's reputation represented acceptable collateral damage simply to protect your fragile, aristocratic ego. I scanned the surrounding dining space, making eye contact with multiple individuals I possessed zero prior familiarity with, but who now possessed absolute clarity regarding my genuine identity. My sole objective was ensuring every person sitting here consumed the unfiltered truth prior to reading about my identity within the publication again, because I guarantee you will read about me again. However, the subsequent article will detail the actual, documented reality. I snapped my leather case shut and adjusted my necktie perfectly. Please enjoy the remainder of your luxurious feast. It is officially the final meal I will ever finance for this household. While I marched toward the exit threshold, I clearly detected the massive social detonation igniting behind my back. Voices escalating rapidly into furious accusations, aggressive inquiries demanding immediate justifications, the unmistakable audio of a meticulously fabricated high society illusion crumbling into absolute dust. It represented the most spectacular festive symphony I had ever experienced. The official documentation materialized on a standard Tuesday morning during early spring, delivered via registered postal courier, carrying the crushing gravity of severe judicial law, consequences behind every printed syllable. I authorized the delivery at my primary entrance, observing how the fresh atmospheric currents carried the scent of blooming vegetation and endless potential, completely replacing the suffocating winter misery that defined those miserable December weeks. Notice of default, the external packaging displayed. Final ultimatum for remittance. Inside the envelope, 90 days of ignored property loan installments had finally crashed into them, resembling a catastrophic tidal wave of pure consequence. $8,400, currently in extreme arrears. 14 consecutive calendar days remaining to normalize the ledger, or immediately trigger property seizure protocols against the exact structure my capital had originally secured. I placed the thick document aside and resumed enjoying my heated beverage, consuming the information the way one might review meteorological data concerning a distant continent. Mildly fascinating, yet absolutely not my personal crisis anymore. My communication device had vibrated relentlessly across the previous several weeks, delivering increasingly frantic audio messages. Her specific contact identifier was permanently blocked immediately following her initial hysterical voicemail recording. Her parents, whose elite social ranking within the municipality had completely evaporated into nothingness following their utter humiliation during that festive feast. Even my boy, whose repeated calls I actively ignored, driven by a combination of lingering fury and mild curiosity regarding exactly how long it would require for him to finally swallow his massive pride. The ultimate calculation, apparently, was 97 calendar days. He struck my entrance barrier that specific Thursday evening, completely stripped of the arrogant confidence he displayed when banishing me from their holiday gathering. Instead, he resembled an individual who had physically aged a full decade across a 3-month span. Severe, darkened hollows dragging down his orbital sockets, his premium corporate attire heavily creased, the distinct aroma of pure desperation radiating from his pores like inexpensive cologne. "Father," he whispered the moment I unlatched the door, "we desperately require a dialogue." I shifted sideways, permitting his entry, carefully observing how his eyes scanned my living space as though viewing it for the very first time. The brand new seating fixtures I acquired, utilizing my initial debt-free income. The freshly applied, pigment-coating vertical surfaces that remained entirely neglected for 8 years because every spare, fractional cent was funneled directly into his artificial reality. The structural improvements I finally possessed the capital to execute now that I ceased permanently subsidizing an alternative family's suburban fantasy. "Impressive environment," he noted softly. "This represents the exact outcome when an individual invests their capital into themselves rather than pouring it into ungrateful recipients," I responded, sinking comfortably into my newly purchased reclining chair. "Beverage?" He rejected the offer with a subtle head movement, hovering nervously upon the absolute edge of my sofa, as though terrified to establish any genuine comfort. "Father, I desperately require you to comprehend the sheer magnitude of my remorse regarding this entire catastrophe. The festive feast, the malicious journalism piece, the manner in which our family treated you." Continue. "I possessed zero knowledge regarding him planting that malicious narrative. I swear upon my life I remained entirely ignorant. The moment I discovered the truth..." He dragged his trembling fingers aggressively through his scalp. "Good Lord, Father. The horrific statements they expressed behind your back. The way they degraded our lineage. The horrible things they uttered regarding Mother's legacy." My jaw muscles locked instantly at the reference to my late spouse, yet I maintained my vocal delivery at an icy, level frequency. "And what specific statements did they express regarding your deceased mother?" "That she comprehended her inferior societal ranking vastly better than you comprehend yours. That she recognized appropriate social boundaries. They completely failed to maintain eye contact with me. I was obligated to defend your honor. I was obligated to crush their arrogance years prior." "Correct," I confirmed without elaboration. "You absolutely were." We remained suspended within absolute silence for an extended duration, the crushing gravity of 60 months of catastrophic failures occupying the physical space separating our bodies. Outdoors, I detected the mechanical hum of a neighbor manicuring his grass. The standard, auditory backdrop of a standard Thursday evening within a standard district where offspring refrained from permanently banishing their parents from holiday gatherings. "The property is currently entering the seizure process," he finally admitted. "I am fully aware. We remain completely incapable of satisfying the monthly ledger without..." He paused, suddenly processing exactly how pathetic his statement sounded. "Without my massive financial intervention," I concluded his sentence. "Without the capital I faithfully transferred every single month while you permitted your spouse's lineage to treat me resembling toxic waste. I recognize exactly how terrible this appears." I shifted my torso forward, guaranteeing his eyes remained locked onto mine. "Are you precisely aware of the exact monetary sum I transferred into your accounts across a half-decade span?" He nodded his head, looking utterly destroyed. "She ran the mathematics following the holiday disaster. The loan installments, the initial deposit, all the secondary expenses, exceeding $200,000. $237,468, I corrected with lethal precision. I possess the exact calculation because I finally executed an action I was obligated to perform countless years prior. I fully audited the ledger." His facial structure completely collapsed. "Father, I am incredibly remorseful. I possess zero solutions for repairing this catastrophe." "You are incapable of repairing it, boy. That capital is permanently vaporized. However, vastly more critically, those chronological years are permanently vaporized. 60 months where I possess the opportunity to cultivate a genuine bond with my son, rather than actively financing your spouse's delusional, aristocratic simulation. I recognize that reality. I fully recognize that reality currently." He elevated his gaze toward me, projecting an emotion slightly resembling desperate optimism. "However, perhaps we possess the ability to commence entirely from zero. Perhaps a pathway exists to—" "Are you actively requesting that I reinstate the monthly property loan transfers?" The desperate optimism instantly evaporated from his pupils. "We are destined to lose absolutely everything, Father. The residence, her baseline respect for my authority, her parents' total validation. I am completely lost regarding my future trajectory." "You will inevitably discover a solution," I stated, my tone lacking any inherent cruelty. "Operating in the exact same manner, I discovered a solution for surviving without a child who fundamentally respected my existence. Operating in the exact same manner, I adapted to consuming my holiday meals entirely isolated while you feasted alongside parasites who genuinely believed I existed beneath their shoe soles." He commenced weeping then, producing quiet, pathetic sounds resembling a human who had entirely exhausted every conceivable alternative. "I permanently lost you, correct? I selected their approval over your loyalty, and currently I have lost you for eternity." I analyzed his breaking form for an extended period. This exact human I nurtured, adored, and sacrificed endless resources to protect. The exact human who permitted his spouse's lineage to brainwash him into believing his own blood was insufficiently refined for their elite companionship. "My boy," I articulated finally, "you did not lose my loyalty. You intentionally threw my loyalty into the garbage. A massive distinction exists between those two concepts." He dragged the rear of his palm across his wet eyelids. "Does any fractional possibility exist, any conceivable pathway where you might grant me absolution?" "I granted you absolution many months prior," I stated, genuinely meaning the sentiment. "However, absolution absolutely does not translate into rewinding the clock to our previous dynamic. It absolutely does not translate into ignoring this entire catastrophic betrayal. Nor does it translate into me reinstating financial life support for an artificial reality that explicitly demanded I remain eternally grateful for microscopic fragments of your temporary attention. Then what exactly does your absolution translate to?" "Real family means being wanted, not just being useful." I pushed myself upward and strolled toward my brick hearth, where my late spouse's portrait rested directly adjacent to a freshly framed photograph. Myself posing alongside Rosa and her extended lineage during our spring gathering. The absolute first major celebration I enjoyed, surrounded by individuals who genuinely desired my physical presence. It translates to the reality that if you truly desire a bond with my person, you are required to construct it entirely from absolute zero. It translates to demonstrating genuine reverence rather than aggressively demanding I somehow earn it. It translates to executing life decisions grounded entirely within moral correctness, rather than temporary convenience. I rotated my body back toward his position. Furthermore, it absolutely translates to the reality that the next time any individual, your spouse, her lineage, literally anybody, attempts to banish me from a familial gathering, you will instantly remember exactly who truly behaves resembling genuine blood. He bobbed his head with agonizing slowness, finally processing, potentially for the absolute first time in his adult existence, that profound reverence was absolutely never a commodity you could simply extract without consequence. Regarding the residence, he inquired with a fragile whisper, it is absolutely not my crisis to solve anymore. I returned to my seating fixture, experiencing a sensation of weightlessness I hadn't felt in countless years. You operate as a fully matured adult male. Discover a solution exactly like fully matured adult males do. Secure employment that actually covers your living expenses. Liquidate the property and acquire shelter you can genuinely afford. Cease existing drastically beyond your financial capabilities while anticipating alternative humans will eternally subsidize your reckless decisions. He elevated himself slowly from the sofa, his spinal column aligning vertically for the initial instance since his arrival. Your assessment is entirely accurate regarding every single aspect. I recognize this. He marched toward the exit threshold, briefly pivoting backward. Father, regardless of its ultimate value, witnessing you aggressively defend your dignity during that festive feast, I experienced profound pride regarding your actions, severe humiliation and intense fury, undeniably, but profound pride as well. Excellent, I responded. Perhaps a microscopic fragment of potential still remains within your character. Respect isn't something you take, it's something you earn. Following his departure, I decanted a generous measure of the premium fermented grain spirit and stepped outward onto my rear deck. The spring season was actively consuming the municipality, the timber branches initiating their blooming cycle, the atmospheric currents warming with endless potential. Within 4 months, I would reach my 63rd year. She had been deceased for 8 full cycles. I squandered 5 of those cycles functioning as a disposable welcome mat for parasites completely incapable of appreciating absolute sacrifice. I harbored zero intentions of squandering even a single additional second. My pocket device vibrated, delivering a digital message from Rosa. Sunday feast approaching. The younger ones desperately wished to present their academic creations to you. I produced a genuine smile and typed my response. Absolutely would not miss the occasion for anything. Genuine lineage, as the universe ultimately revealed, represented a sanctuary you discovered entirely alongside individuals who actively desired your inclusion. Everything else was simply an obscenely overpriced theatrical performance, and I was permanently finished purchasing admission tickets for productions where I was violently banned from accessing the stage. The fermented grain spirit tasted exactly like absolute liberation, and my upcoming trajectory appeared precisely as brilliant as I was fully prepared to construct it. If you appreciated this emotional journey, please hit that like button on this video. Make sure to subscribe to Viking Insight and share your personal thoughts regarding this situation down in the comments.